So this is part of our new Q&A series. We are interviewing with a number of our contacts, senior professionals across marketing and digital, a few HR and talent directors in the mix as well. We've put together a few questions. And if I may, I think we'll sort of dive right in, because I would imagine that the conversation will flow out the back of the questions as well. So the first one is, you've had many promotions during your tenure at M&S and previously Tesco. What would you say has been the keys to your success?
It's a really good question. I think actually, as a marketeer, and I started off more in the world of consumer insight, and as I've got more senior, I've got into broader marketing roles, but I've still got that sort of insight and research kind of heart deep down. And I think ultimately, for anyone wanting to get ahead and build a career in marketing, understanding your customers and putting yourself in their shoes has got to be the most important thing. There's so much technical expertise, particularly now, that people need to learn for their roles. But if I'm ever mentoring, junior marketeers or people just starting out in their career, I will always tell them that working out who your customer is, listening to that customer, understanding them, putting themselves in their shoes, that's the most important thing. I mean, a couple of things obviously go with that. And having spent most of my career in retail, I would say that in retail, actually, progression is often given to those who can balance pace and energy and drive, which you need in retail. You win and lose your customers every day with that thoughtful, strategic approach. And again, I probably bore my team with this phrase all the time, but as retail, we have to have one foot in now and one foot in next. And that means within a single day, normally within a single week, you can be both looking at yesterday's sales figures, working with the trading teams to work out what are you going to do for this weekend, and how are you going to keep driving trade and keep being relevant to customers, while at the same time planning that big seasonal event that's 9 months out, while at the same time, building the propositions and infrastructure that are going to help you win 18 months or 2 years out. So I think, the people who I see progressing, particularly in retail marketing, are those who can, keep an eye on what the customer is doing, put themselves in the customer's shoes, be the voice of the customer in the boardroom, but also balance that strategic approach with the need to be trading and need to be doing exactly kind of what is relevant now. And then I think my final piece on that would be, as people progress in their careers, particularly these days, and, moving, across quite a breadth of an organization, being relatively quick at working out when you start a new role, what does success look like in this role? What does success look like? And again, one of the phrases I'll use with my team when I'm talking to them is, what do we do in the organization that if our team didn't exist would go wrong? Because there's lots of things that you do, and every team has, hundreds of different objectives. What are the few key things that if we don't deliver them, it won't happen anywhere else in the organization? And then working out how you can really kind of overachieve at those and make sure everyone knows about it.
Oh yeah, I like that. And you're absolutely right. There's nothing pacier than the retail sector, that's for sure. So Christmas is a time of genuine excitement for customers. Can you tell us a bit about what you think customers are going to be looking for from retailers this year, and from M&S in particular?
Yeah, I mean, at a retailer like M&S, we start our first Christmas meetings. Well, we start them now for next Christmas. So, everyone else starts getting Christmassy about now, but we'll often be sitting there in the middle of February or the middle of July, surrounded by baubles and Christmas trees, deep into what's going to go on with turkeys. But we've been doing lots of listening to customers this year, and it is going to be really different, isn't it? And there's a couple of things going on there. The first is the obvious one, which is customers have had 2 very disrupted Christmases with COVID, to put it mildly. And when we talked to customers right back in springtime this year, and we said, go on, tell us a little bit about Christmas next year, if you can do, they said, well, we really want next Christmas, the Christmas we're just coming into now, to be brilliant. We know we want to have a proper Christmas, because the last 2 have been disrupted in all sorts of different ways. And that causes real hurt for people, to be honest. People look forward to Christmas. It's a really important winter break. It's something that people hold out for. And they feel in lots of ways they haven't had that over the last couple of years. And then obviously what's happened over the last few months is that cost of living crisis has just started to escalate.
Yes.
And customers are either feeling it themselves personally, which is for almost all customers now, certainly when they look at energy bills or mortgage repayments, even if they're not, they're very worried about it and worried about what will come. So that has become an overarching concern. So you've sort of got those two things battling in customers' brains. And what they tell us, therefore, is that they want to have a really good Christmas. And actually, they use words like need. I need to have a really good Christmas this year. Always interesting to hear up on that exact language that people use. I need to have a really good Christmas this year. But I don't want to go into January feeling I've really kind of overspent. I can't afford to do that this year. There just isn't the kind of flex in my kind of budgets to allow me to do that. So they tell us they're going to be quite thoughtful and quite prioritized. And actually, they've learned a few things over the last couple of years, particularly the year before last, which was the first COVID Christmas. Yes. When we did research then, they told us that actually they quite liked having a smaller group round the table on Christmas Day. You know, don't tell the cousins, but actually we quite liked having just the four of us or the five of us or just my parents round. And so people tell us that this year, again, slightly smaller celebrations than we might have seen in the past. Those are going to be the norm. People have seen it and they've had it and they've enjoyed it. It's less stressful often for the person doing the cooking or the hosting. And they're going to bring that with them into this Christmas. And then secondly, last Christmas, they told us they had to be quite choiceful. You remember, depending on where you were in the country, there were all sorts of different rules what you could and couldn't do. We were all asked to kind of, be sensible in the run up to protect Christmas. But actually, again, customers tell us there's some of that they liked, that kind of 2 or 3 week run of a work party and a school event and a church event and meeting up with friends in the book group. Got to the point in previous years where it just wasn't fun by the time you got to Christmas Eve. So this year, again, they're going to be more choiceful about what's going to be really relevant for them. They're going to be more choiceful about what they can enjoy and what's really going to add value to them. And I think for us as retailers, that's something we can all listen to. And the main thing there is we've got to make sure whatever we are selling to customers, whether it's a product, some food or a gift or an experience, are we really offering them value? Are we offering them great value? That doesn't mean cheap. It almost never means cheap, actually. But it means, are we showing customers that what we are offering them is going to give them real value? And finally, for M&S Food, one of the really reassuring things from us from the research is that customers tell us that Christmas Day dinner, that lunch, that meal that they have, that's pretty sacrosanct. They're going to keep hold of that. Even if the grown-ups don't give each other presents that they didn't really want to save a bit of money, they're going to look after that and they're going to look after gifts for the kids. So those are the two most important things they're going to hold on to.
So what we're going to protect, then we're going to protect.
Absolutely. People will protect what matters most to them. And for most of them, that is gifts for the children. And that's that Christmas Day meal and that experience together.
Well, it's I think you're absolutely right. I think there is definitely a sort of feeling everyone felt a bit cheated that they'd lost the last couple of Christmases. So we're going to be treating ourselves, but in a thoughtful way. And I hope that I would imagine, because we do a lot within the travel sector as well, it looks like they're going to have quite a busy Christmas. People who have maybe missed trips or were due to go back to Australia to see friends and family, etc. It looks like a lot of that is being planned for this Christmas too. So
no, and I think that's another thing, isn't it, where it's what value customers apply to that. Just going away for a break, because we always go away for a break in half term, maybe not, but having a chance to reconnect with family, or just treating ourselves for that. We went away on holiday for a 40th birthday just a couple of months ago, and actually the person involved was 42 by this point, but we'd missed the 40th birthday 2 years over, and we can't be the only ones like that. There's a lot
we've done a couple of those,
a lot of pent-up ones, and I can't be the only one who has spent almost every weekend this summer going to weddings, which is lovely. But again, 3 years of pent-up weddings. I think we're probably seeing the same in the holiday sector as well, aren't we?
You're absolutely right. So, it is a time of real change. What do you think will be a priority for marketing leaders over these next few years?
It's tempting, isn't it, to look at it and say what's going to be new? But I think I would start by saying the priority for marketing leaders is what it always has been for marketing leaders, which is to kind of, again, be the voice of the customer within the business, understand the customer and meet the customer needs. I think the best businesses and the most successful businesses are businesses where the marketing team don't just execute the advertising. They don't just listen to what the business wants to do and then put together, some promotions around that. But they're ones where the marketing leaders are really involved in those kind of business conversations and building the plans for the business and making sure the business is customer focused. So I think that has to remain at the heart of everything. I do think a couple of things I'd add to that. One of which is, I think the war for talent, as it's called, for marketing at all levels, is as big as it ever has been. And I see that particularly when we're recruiting graduates and more junior employees. The range of different exciting careers which young people can go into now seems broader than it ever has. And I think it is up to marketers to make the case for how exciting working in marketing is. I'm obviously biased. I've been doing it for all my career. But I think it is just, a career that gives a huge amount of variety, a huge amount of intellectual stimulation, a huge amount of opportunity for, for personal growth and career progression. It can be a real meritocracy, whatever sort of sector you're in, because actually what you do is really visible. And actually, if you're someone who is really doing a great job and achieving within a role, that can be recognised really swiftly. So I think as marketers, we need to keep making that case. Both the next generation of marketing talent and when we're recruiting people into our organizations now. So I think, focus on the customer, make sure you've got the right people in your teams and that you are looking after your brands, not just for your customers, but as an employer as well. Do people want to be coming and joining your business? And then finally, I think more and more for marketing to really succeed, being plugged into every different aspect of the organization is absolutely crucial, because I think the days in which marketing could put out a campaign and create something themselves in our modern digital organizations are gone. If I think of something that we've launched and achieved recently, we launched a new campaign called Look Behind the Label at Marks and Spencer, right across food and clothing and home and banking, which was all about really kind of bringing to life what we used to call our Plan A commitments, our environment, our CSR, our ESG, whatever language you use, the way in which M&S does business in a way that is right for the planet and right for the communities we're in. And actually, that was a piece of work that could never, live just within the marketing team. It was led primarily by the marketing team, but it required a huge amount of interaction with our colleagues in, the technical and buying teams, with people on the IT side of things, with overseas sourcing, with our colleague communications to make sure our 70,000 colleagues were, kind of understanding that and briefed on it, and their voice was included in it as well. So I think more and more for marketing leaders, that sort of work. That means you are spending the majority of your diary talking to people not in the marketing team, not just in your ad agency or your media agency, but as you get more senior, touching base with people and building that network right across large and often complex organizations.
Yeah, it's very true. It's that genuine collaboration, and the companies that get that right do very, very well. Mm-hmm. So you've led several teams over the years. What would you say has been your most defining leadership experience to date?
I suspect if this is part of a series, or as this is part of a series and you're talking to a number of people, I suspect other people might say this as well, because I think for any of us who are leading a team, 2.5 years ago when COVID struck, it was the biggest change that we saw in the workplace, to our sectors, to our careers, in a lifetime. And if I think of where we went from just in a matter of weeks, from something that was of interest in the news and we had to be aware of, that's something that was affecting every aspect of everyone's life in the UK. And again, for anyone who is leading a team, I certainly felt it, having to juggle all those constraints of all of your team suddenly being dispersed and in their own homes. Now, some businesses were very flexible and used to that. Others were used to getting people together. And I think all of us were used to getting people together at least some of the time. So dealing with a distributed team, then dealing with whatever was going on in your sector. And again, I spent 20 years or so in food retail looking at graphs from Kantar and others that nudge up by 1% or down by 0.5% and getting very excited about it. And suddenly everything changed. Things were going up and down by 150%, 200%. We did not even know for a short period of time whether our food business would be allowed to stay open. Were we essential products or not? And clearly it turned out that, the food industry as a whole was, played a really important part in it. So, you've got your team, going through a very different way of working. You've got your customers being enormously disrupted. You've got communication being very difficult. And at the same time as that, for all of us, we had real personal changes and things to worry about as well. I had 2 primary school age children at home. My wife works full time, so we were both working, me on this side of the house, her 3 rooms that way, and the children somewhere in the middle, going sort of mildly feral at times, but trying to kind of keep them in control. And as a leader, trying to be empathetic enough with all of your teams, all of whom were going through that, and some of whom were going through much tougher situations. And again, it's slightly hard to remember it now, but in that very early stage of the pandemic, real worry and fear as well about people's health and well-being, and I was lucky enough in my family that close friends and people in my team who had elderly relatives who were really very unwell at that point, and managing all of that disruption at the same time as being empathetic for your team, at the same time as your business is going through real demands. I think that was a really testing experience for a lot of us, and I would never wish that again on anyone, but no. I know that if I look back on it, I learned a huge amount through that myself, about what we do, about marketing, but really about leadership and about leading a team.
It'll be interesting to see as we complete this series, but I have a feeling that a lot of people will talk about that as one of the most defining periods of their sort of leadership experience, because it was a time of such immense change. It pushed everyone to their limits. And to your point, you're managing so many different things going on at once. So yes, it's be interesting what everyone says. So what piece of career advice has stayed with you and would help others who are starting out on their career?
I think the best piece of advice I was given was actually by a mentor I had when I was on the graduate scheme at a previous employer. And I was just coming off that sort of 18-month graduate scheme where you do lots of placements, and you sort of have a menu of jobs in front of you. Do I want to go and do this, or do I want to go and do that? And it feels like a sort of, almost impossible choice to make at that stage in your early 20s, where you don't really know that much about the workplace at all. And my mentor said actually something that stuck with me and which I've always followed, which is who you work for is just as important as what you do. It is much better to have a job which is in the right ballpark and might not be your perfect job, but working for someone who thinks you're brilliant, will sponsor you and champion you and give you lots of opportunities, and who you will enjoy working with and learn from, than the perfect job working for that mythical terrible boss. So I've always made that decision and always advised others that if you have a choice, working for the right person is just as important as working in exactly the right role. And many of us are lucky enough that often those things come together and we have brilliant jobs and we have a great boss. But my current manager I've worked for in 3 different organizations, and that shows you that I've followed her kind of around because of what I get out of working for her, what I learn, the freedom I'm given to learn and to develop and to grow in my role as well. So yeah, in short, think about who you work for, not just about what you do.
How very, very true. And I think it's one of those things that you only probably realise once you get further into your career. So yeah, in terms of passing that on to others who are starting out, that's an absolute winner of a piece of advice there. And finally, what's for you, Andy, over the next sort of 5-10 years with your career journey? What are your sort of ambitions for the future?
Good question. I've always been I think I've always been what I would call a journey person rather than a destination person, which is I always want to be enjoying the role I'm doing at the moment and putting everything into that. And I know some people and really good friends who've had that really clear aspiration. I want to do this by then. I remember right back when I was about 13 and people were choosing their GCSEs, being very confused by some of my friends who wanted to go and be vets, and being a vet required them to choose the right GCSEs and then the right A-levels and then do a 7-year degree, and and they were thinking more than a lifetime ahead for them, and I've never been that sort of person at all. So I'm about doing a job that I can enjoy doing in a business that I like working in. I love working in M&S Food. It's been a brilliant turnaround to be part of. I would hesitate to say that turnaround is anywhere near complete. We've made huge strides over the last 4 years, but I see an awful lot of upside there and an awful lot more growth, both personally for me in my career, but also for the business. So for me, it's about carrying on enjoying the job that I'm doing. I get a huge amount out of bringing people on and developing people. So again, if I'm in a role where I can see my team flourish and thrive, where I can set the right environment for them, where I can see them come on. I love it when I have people who have been working for me who become peers, and that's something I really enjoy. So I want to carry on developing teams in that way and doing that in whatever role that looks like.
Oh, that sounds like a very positive way to end our questions. Thank you very, very much for going through that. I'm sure that will offer a great insight and of huge value, certainly to marketers setting out on their careers. Andy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.